March morning, 1945, Cologne. I remember the light first. A pale, washed-out glow pressing through the smoke that had hung above Cologne for so long it felt like part of the weather. We were parked in the shadow of a half-collapsed apartment block, my crew moving slow, almost lazy, as if the war had finally burned itself out. I sat on the Pershing's glassy with my helmet off, wiping soot from the 90mm barrel. Across the street, Sherman boys were doing the same, scrubbing tracks, tapping frozen mud off fenders, arguing over rations like we weren't sitting in the ribs of a dead city. Even our mechanics seemed relaxed, leaning on wrenches, breathing in that cold air that smelled like chalk and ash. For a moment, a rare, fragile moment, it almost felt peaceful. Routine. Predictable. A rhythm carved by months of pushing through ruined towns that all looked the same after a while. Even the cathedral, the great black spires torn open by bombs, felt like scenery. A landmark in a world where landmarks meant nothing. But peace in war is always a lie. And in Cologne, it shattered the same way it always does. First came a sound, distant, sharp, wrong. Not artillery. Not a rifle. Something cleaner, like a hammer hitting steel a mile away. Then a flicker in the ruins ahead, a slim shifting shadow that did not belong to rubble. And then, silence. A silence so deep it felt like the city inhaled and held its breath. I remember standing up slowly, feeling the air tighten on my skin. I didn't know what was coming, not yet, but every instinct in me whispered the same truth. Whatever's waiting for us in those streets, it's worse than anything we've met before. If you think you know this story, trust me, you've only heard the sanitized version. Stay with me and don't you dare click away now, because the moment that broke that silence changed everything. For me, for my crew, and for every man who thought he understood what German armor could do. I didn't truly understand the weight of that silence until later, until the whole story unraveled in my head. Because what happened in Cologne wasn't a moment born in a single morning. It was the end of 2 years of brutal arithmetic that had already shaped every decision we made on the battlefield. I'll say this plainly, for most of the war we were the ones being hunted. German panthers and tigers owned the open fields. Their guns reached farther, hit harder, and tore through Shermans like they were made of tin. I saw it myself in France, rounds punching into our tanks before we even spotted where the fire came from. I heard the German confidence in their voices over intercepted radio chatter, laughing, comparing Shermans to Ronson lighters, swearing they could light us up with a single spark. And they weren't wrong. Not then. We adapted the only ways we could. We learned to flank, to swarm, to sacrifice one tank so another could slip behind the German line. We called thunderbolts when things got truly desperate. It was doctrine, etched into us through loss after loss. Never fight them frontally. Never trade shots. Survive long enough to maneuver. That was our reality. And make no mistake, the Germans believed their own myth just as fiercely. Their tankers walked like kings. They trusted their optics, their armor, their legendary 75s and 88s. I could almost admire their certainty, until I watched friends die because of it. But the war wasn't frozen in place. Something changed long before Cologne, something that felt at first like rumor, then like hope. A new machine had arrived in Europe. A tank with a gun that sounded like a promise and armor that finally didn't feel like a coffin. The Pershing. Most men only saw sketches or heard whispers. Me. I was sitting inside one, the one they called Eagle 7. We weren't special. We weren't veterans in this machine. We barely knew its rhythms, its quirks, its stubborn gears. But we were carrying a weapon the Germans had never faced head-on. And Cologne, those cramped stone streets twisting under smoke, would be the place where their old certainty met our new reality. A place where everything the Germans believed about us, everything we believed about them, would be tested in a single violent instant. Before we push into that moment, do me one thing. If you think you've heard this story before, trust me, you haven't. Hit subscribe before we continue, because the rules of armored warfare are about to break in the most violent way imaginable. We rolled into Cologne believing this push would be like the others, slow, methodical, dangerous but predictable. My Pershing trailed behind 2 Shermans as we advanced block by block, infantry moving in tight groups along the sidewalks, rifles up, boots crunching over plaster and shattered brick. The smoke hung low, clinging to our hulls as if the city itself wanted to keep us hidden. Command told us the next intersection would be routine. A few snipers maybe, a machine gun nest if luck ran bad. Nothing unusual. Nothing clever. Just another ruined corner we'd clear before dusk. I remember leaning forward in my seat, breathing the warm metallic air of the turret, thinking about how this might finally be the day we reached the river. Then the shot came. It sliced through the city like a whip crack, Sharp, precise, unmistakably German. Before anyone could react, the panther revealed itself, sliding from the shadows as if the ruins had birthed it whole. Bartleborth's machine, though I didn't know his name then, was positioned perfectly, angled just right, patient as a spider. His first round hit the lead Sherman square through the gun shield. I saw the flash reflect off the cathedral windows. The tank jolted, froze, then began to burn from the inside out. No screams reached us, but I felt them anyway. Before the second Sherman even processed what happened, 2 more shots came. One punched through the side of the turret. The other tore the track clean off, dropping the tank helplessly into the rubble like a wounded animal struggling to breathe. Everything fell apart in less than a minute. The infantry dove for cover. Radios burst into static and half-formed orders. Someone shouted to flank. Someone else screamed retreat. The panther didn't rush. It simply watched, gun steady, daring anyone to challenge it. And I felt something cold grip the back of my neck. This wasn't an ambush. This was domination, clean, confident, familiar. The old rules had returned. The ones that said we were prey and the Germans were kings. For a heartbeat, the city held its breath again. Smoke drifted. Flames crawled up the sides of the ruined Sherman hulls. My crew stared down that street knowing a single mistake would end us too. And in that silence, in that crack between before and after, I understood the terrible truth. The moment we thought we could handle anything was the moment Cologne reminded us the war was not done teaching new lessons. The firefight didn't explode all at once. It tightened like a wire drawing back further and further until you could hear it hum. After the Shermans fell silent, the whole column seemed to collapse in on itself. Infantry scrambled between door frames, shouting over each other, choking on dust as chunks of brick slid from blasted walls. Someone yelled that the panther was moving. Someone else swore there were 2 of them. No one knew anything for certain except this. Every inch of the intersection belonged to the enemy. I sat inside Eagle 7 with my hands pressed against the sight, trying to cut through the haze ahead. All I saw were flames licking out of the Sherman hulls, black smoke mixing with the winter fog. The radio crackled with orders that contradicted each other. Flank left, hold position, pull back, advance. It was the sound of men who had lost the rhythm of the fight. The panther fired again, the blast echoing down the narrow street like thunder rolling through a canyon. The round smashed into a building beside us, showering my turret with fragments that rang like hail on metal. My heart hammered against my ribs as I tried to track the muzzle flash, but the bastard was shifting positions, using the ruins like a second skin. Then the order came through, sharp and unmistakable. Eagle 7, advance. Support the infantry. Neutralize the threat. Neutralize. As if this thing ahead of us was a machine on a checklist, not a predator already feasting on our armor. We lurched forward, the Pershing heavier and more stubborn than anything I'd driven before. The controls fought me, the engine growled, and the visibility felt like looking through a keyhole smeared with soot. Every foot forward felt like we were stepping into a kill zone carved by God himself. The panther must have sensed movement. Its turret swung toward the side street we were pushing through. I saw the barrel shift, slow, deliberate, confident. German confidence. The kind earned through years of winning duels just like this. Hold steady, I whispered, though my voice shook. Smoke drifted between us like a curtain being pulled aside. The panther locked on. I could almost feel its gunner's breath sinking to mine. 1 heartbeat. 2. We fired on the move, our first real shot in this machine. The recoil slammed through the turret, nearly throwing my shoulder out of socket. The round screamed past the intersection and detonated somewhere beyond, a miss, but a message. And on the German side I felt it, a ripple of uncertainty. This wasn't a Sherman. This wasn't the prey they were used to. We weren't supposed to be here. And neither were they. Inside Eagle 7, the world had shrunk to 5 men breathing the same tight, metallic air. Every one of us carried a different fear, a different memory of the Shermans burning in the street ahead. And yet we were moving toward the same threat, toward the panther that had already rewritten the day in fire. I remember glancing at Smoyer, our gunner. His jaw was rigid, eyes glued to the sight, tracking shadows that might have been muzzle flashes or might have been ghosts. It was his first time firing the 90mm in combat. First time knowing that one miscalculation, one bad angle, one twitch, would mean a German round carving straight through our armor and turning us into smoke. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. The tension in his shoulders said enough. Our loader, Travis, fumbled with the next shell, hands shaking even though he tried to hide it. He kept whispering under his breath, something like a prayer, something like a promise. Every clang of the breech made him jump. But he didn't stop. Fear didn't slow him, it sharpened him. Outside, the worst reality of tank war sprawled in front of us. The two Shermans were still burning, silhouettes of friends trapped inside. Men I joked with that morning now lay folded against ruptured steel. I forced myself not to look too long, because if I did, I'd freeze. Across the ruins, the Panther crew was facing their own nightmare. We didn't know their names then. Only later did I learn Bartleborth commanded that machine, a veteran who believed, with every justified ounce of experience, that no American tank could meet him head-on. Now he watched our silhouette through his optics, hesitant, unsure if we were one of theirs or something new. That hesitation trembled invisibly through the battlefield. It was the first crack in his certainty. Infantry scattered along both sides of the street, pinned by the Panther's line of fire yet refusing to fall back. They'd seen their friends die screaming, but they dragged one another through the rubble anyway, pointing, signaling, begging us to push forward. No gun shields, no armor, just raw, terrified courage. And then there was Sergeant James Bates. A cameraman of all things, perched in a half-collapsed doorway with his film rolling, praying the building wouldn't drop on him. His legs trembled so violently I could see it from the turret. But he kept filming the duel about to unfold, determined to capture whatever the war demanded next. In that moment, the tanks, the armor, the firepower, they all fell away. What remained were people caught in the jaws of something enormous and merciless. Every second cost a breath. Every choice cost a life. And we were seconds from the choice that would cost everything. We pushed into the intersection like we were driving into the mouth of something alive. The street opened before us, flames from the Shermans twisting upward, smoke curling against shattered walls, the heat trembling in front of my gun sight. And there, across the wreckage, crouched low behind the rubble like a hunter waiting for the final breath, was the Panther. Its turret was already aimed. Its gun was already steady. One shot, just one, and Eagle 7 would join the burning hulks littering the crossroads. I felt my throat tighten. I could hear every inhale inside the turret, fast and sharp, as if we all understood the same truth at the same instant. This was it. No flanking. No air support. No tricks. Just a duel at suicide distance. The Panther hesitated, barely. Later I learned why. Bartleborth needed one more heartbeat to confirm our shape, to be sure we weren't one of his own. That moment of doubt, so small it barely existed, became the hinge on which the entire fight turned. Gun laid, Smoyer whispered. His voice barely carried over the engine. Target locked. I steadied my breath. Fire. The 90mm roared, the blast washing the street in thunder. Our shells smashed into the Panther's front armor, punching through with a violence I felt in my teeth. Through the smoke, I saw the loader's position erupt, metal fragments bursting outward as the gun jerked off target. Load. Travis slammed the next round in, his fear burned away by pure reflex. Fire again. The second shot tore through the Panther's side. The tank shuddered, armor splitting like bone. The turret tried to swing, too slow. The third round ignited everything inside. The Panther went from a shape to a furnace. Flames burst through the hatches. The crew tumbled out, rolling across the cobblestones, Bartleborth among them, his uniform smoking, his movements frantic and disbelieving. 90 seconds. That was all it took. A myth built over years shattered in under 2 minutes. The intersection fell into a silence so heavy it crushed the air from our lungs. Smoke drifted upward in lazy spirals. The Shermans crackled as their ammunition cooked off. The Panther burned like a dying star in the rubble. Around us lay the inventory of the duel, cold and simple. 2 American tanks destroyed. 1 German Predator gutted. A crossroads drowned in fire, brass, and stunned disbelief. And I realized, with a chill that cut deeper than fear, the price of certainty is death. The cost of underestimation is defeat. When the smoke finally thinned and the echoes of the duel stopped vibrating through the stone, Cologne didn't feel like a city anymore. It felt like a carcass, picked apart, hollow, echoing with the last breaths of men who'd fought for streets that didn't remember their names. Eagle 7 idled in the center of the crossroads, engine rumbling low, our breaths loud in the sudden quiet. No cheers. No victory cries. Just the slow realization that we were still alive. I climbed halfway out of the turret, the cold air slapping my face as the wind dragged smoke across the cathedral spires. The Panther still burned ahead of us, popping and crackling as its ammunition cooked off. Moments earlier it had felt invincible, inevitable, a predator wrapped in steel. Now it was another wreck in a war drowning in them. The infantry moved first, picking their way through rubble, eyes wide, expressions caught somewhere between awe and disbelief. They had watched Shermans die in front of them. They had watched us take the Panther head-on and win. Some touched the Pershing's hull as they passed, like it was something sacred. Truth is, we didn't feel like victors. We felt like survivors who'd stumbled through a doorway we didn't know existed until we walked through it. Later, long after the fight, I learned Bartelborth survived. He told his family he hesitated because he thought we might be a German design. Something experimental, something his manuals didn't show. That hesitation saved us. And he lived because we fired fast enough to force him out of his burning tank before the flames consumed everything. Smoyer spoke about the battle decades afterward, voice quiet, almost ashamed of the violence in it. He said he was glad some of the German crew escaped. Glad the fire didn't take every man inside. War twists you, but sometimes it leaves pieces untouched, human pieces that refuse to harden. Eagle 7 eventually found its way into a museum. You can stand in front of it today, untouched by smoke or fear, as if it were never anything more than steel on tracks. But I remember the weight of the turret beneath my hands, the trembling in my chest when the Panther took aim, the way the city held its breath the moment before everything changed. Because that's what this duel truly was, not a turning point in the war but a turning point in belief. American crews finally saw a machine that could stand toe-to-toe with the best Germany had built. German crews saw something they were never trained to expect. An American tank that could match them, frontal armor to frontal armor, gun against gun, without flanking, without sacrifice. The myth of German armored invincibility didn't die in a meeting room or a factory. It died in a single intersection under a cathedral shattered by war, where fire met fire and for the first time broke in our favor. If you've stayed with me this far, hit like, drop a comment and subscribe because I want to know. Do you think this duel changed the course of armored warfare, or was it simply the moment the world finally caught up to the truth?